Sometimes the heaviest burdens we carry are the ones we choose never to set down. Tonight, I want to tell you about a weight I bore for decades, one that shaped everything you see around us now, though most of you never knew it existed. My name is Dorothy Mitchell, but everyone's always called me Dot. I'm 71 years old now, sitting here in my daughter's backyard with this glass of lemonade getting warm in my hands. The sun's painting the sky gold and pink, and my grandchildren are running through the grass like little wild things, their laughter cutting through the evening air. Looking at them, at this life we've built, you'd never guess the foundation it all rests on. But every garden has roots you can't see, and some of those roots grow through rocky, difficult ground. I met Robert Mitchell in 1977. I was 21, working at a diner on Route 40, and he came in one Tuesday afternoon wearing a suit that looked too expensive for our little town. He had dark hair slicked back, a smile that could light up a room, and the kind of confidence that made you believe every word that came out of his mouth. He sold insurance, or so he said. Really, what Robert sold was charm. He could convince anyone of anything. By our third date, he'd convinced me I was the most beautiful woman in the world. By our 6th month together, he'd convinced me to marry him. We got married in June of 1978 at the Baptist church my mama attended. I wore a simple white dress from J.C. Penney, and Robert wore that same expensive suit. I was 22 years old and thought I knew what love was. I thought it was the way he looked at me during our first dance, the way he promised me a life full of adventure and security. I believed every word. Sarah came along in 1979, screaming into the world with a head full of dark hair like her daddy's. Jennifer followed in 1981, quieter but just as beautiful. Robert got a job with a sales company that required him to travel, Pennsylvania, Ohio, sometimes as far as Maryland. He'd be gone 3, 4, sometimes 5 days at a time. When he came home, he'd scoop up the girls and spin them around until they were dizzy with giggles. He'd bring me flowers from gas stations and tell me stories about difficult clients and long highway drives. Money was always tight. Robert said sales was unpredictable, that some months were lean. I'd started working part-time as a cleaning woman for office buildings downtown, going in after 5 when the business people went home. I'd vacuum their carpets and empty their trash cans and scrub their toilets, then come home and make dinner for my girls. It wasn't much, but it helped with the grocery bills, with the electric that seemed to climb higher every month. What I couldn't understand was how Robert always seemed to have money for himself. A new watch would appear on his wrist, a bonus from a big sale, he'd say. New suits would show up in the closet. Once he came home with alligator skin shoes that probably cost more than our monthly rent. When I asked about it, he'd kiss my forehead and tell me not to worry, that he had an image to maintain for work, that you had to spend money to make money. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. It was a Tuesday in March of 1983 when my world cracked open. I'd taken a second job as a cashier at the Safeway on 3rd Street, working the afternoon shift after my morning cleaning route. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and my feet ached in my sneakers as I scanned groceries and made small talk with customers. That's when she came through my line. She was younger than me, maybe 25, with blonde hair curled perfectly and makeup that looked like it came from a magazine. She wore a cream-colored blouse that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She placed her items on the conveyor belt, expensive steaks, a bottle of wine, strawberries in March when they cost a fortune. When she pulled out her wallet to pay, I saw it, a credit card with Robert's name on it. My hands started shaking so badly I almost couldn't scan her items. I wanted to scream, to grab her by those perfect curls and demand answers. Instead, I smiled. I scanned her groceries. I bagged them carefully. I made change. I said, "Thank you for shopping at Safeway. Have a nice day." She didn't even look at me. Why would she? I was just the cashier, invisible in my polyester vest and name tag. I finished my shift moving like a ghost. I drove home in our old Chevrolet with the broken radio, my mind completely blank. The girls were at my mother's house. She watched them on Tuesdays. The house was empty when I got there. I went straight to the bedroom we shared, to the closet where Robert kept his things. In the inside pocket of his gray suit jacket, I found it, a receipt from the Starlight Motor Lodge on Highway 22. The date was from the previous week when Robert had supposedly been in Pittsburgh closing a big deal, but the Starlight was 20 minutes from our house. I sat down on the bed, that receipt trembling in my hands. I thought about confronting him, about throwing his clothes out the window, about calling my brother to come throw Robert out of our house. I thought about divorce lawyers and custody battles, and having to explain to Sarah and Jennifer why Daddy didn't live with us anymore. Then I heard the front door open. Robert was home early. I could hear him in the kitchen, opening the refrigerator, probably looking for a beer. In a few seconds, he'd come looking for me, ready to charm me with stories about his day. I looked at that receipt one more time, then I put it back in his pocket. I straightened the jacket on its hanger. I closed the closet door. When Robert came into the bedroom, I was sitting at the vanity, brushing my hair like nothing had happened. "Hey, Dottie," he said, using the nickname I used to love. "How was your day?" I looked at him in the mirror, at his handsome face, his easy smile, his lying eyes. "Fine," I said. "Just fine." That night, I lay awake next to him, listening to him snore, feeling the weight of what I knew pressing down on my chest. I got up quietly and went to the girls' room. Sarah was sprawled across her bed, one arm thrown over her head, mouth open. Jennifer was curled up like a little comma, hugging her stuffed rabbit. They were 9 and 7 years old. They thought their daddy hung the moon. Every time he came home from his business trips, they'd run to him squealing with joy. He'd lift them up, one in each arm, and they'd cover his face with kisses. I stood there in the doorway of their room, and I made a decision. Not for me, I was already broken, already betrayed, but for them. They deserved a childhood full of magic and security and believing their parents loved each other. They deserved better than watching their mother cry and their father make excuses. They deserved a home that felt whole, even if it was all a carefully maintained lie. So I decided I would never say a word. Not to Robert, not to my mother or my friends, not to anyone. I would carry this secret alone, and I would make sure my daughters never wanted for anything. The next morning, I saw a help wanted sign at Rosie's Diner on my way to my cleaning job. Night shift waitress, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. The pay wasn't great, but tips could be good, especially on weekend nights when the factory workers came in after their shifts ended. I got the job. That meant I was cleaning offices from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., working the register at Safeway from 3 to 6, and slinging hash and coffee at Rosie's from 6 at night until 2 in the morning. My mother thought I was crazy, taking on so much work. Sarah and Jennifer were confused about why Mommy was never home anymore. Robert was furious. "What the hell are you doing, Dot? You're going to work yourself to death. We're fine on my salary." I looked at him across our kitchen table, at the man who was living a double life while I struggled to pay for our daughter's school supplies. "I'm saving for the girls' college fund," I said calmly. "They're smart. They deserve better than what we had. Someone has to plan for their future." What could he say to that? He couldn't argue against wanting the best for his daughters, not without revealing that he was spending our money on motel rooms and expensive dinners with women who weren't his wife. So began the hardest years of my life. I worked those 3 jobs for the next 15 years. I opened a savings account at a bank across town, one Robert knew nothing about. Every extra dollar I made went into that account. Every tip from Rosie's, every overtime penny from Safeway, every bonus check from the cleaning company, it all went to building a future for my girls. I watched Robert continue his charades. The woman from Safeway disappeared after a while. I never saw her again, but there were others. I'd find evidence tucked away in his pockets, his car, his wallet, matchbooks from bars I'd never heard of, phone numbers scrawled on napkins. Once, a woman's earring in the glove compartment. Each discovery was a fresh knife to the heart, but I'd gotten good at keeping my face blank, my voice steady. I never let him see me break. The girls never suspected a thing. They saw a mother who worked hard and a father who traveled for business. They saw me at every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every softball game. Robert was usually on the road, but when he was home, he played the part of the doting father perfectly. The girls adored him. How could I take that away from them? There were times I wanted to break, times when I'd be scrubbing toilets at 2 a.m, my back screaming in pain, my hands raw from chemicals, tears streaming down my face. Times when I'd serve coffee to couples at Rosie's and feel such overwhelming loneliness I could barely breathe. Times when I'd pass the Starlight Motor Lodge on my way home and have to pull over because my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't drive. But then I'd think about Sarah's report card, straight A's, about Jennifer's artwork hanging on the refrigerator, about their laughter, their innocence, their whole and happy childhood, and I'd take a deep breath, wipe my face, and keep going. Sarah graduated high school in 1997 as valedictorian. She got a full scholarship to Penn State, and I was able to cover her room and board with the money I'd saved. Robert sat in the audience at her graduation, beaming with pride, shaking hands with other parents and talking about our daughter, the scholar. I wanted to scream that he had no right to that pride, that every dollar that made her education possible had come from my aching back and swollen feet. Instead, I smiled. I took pictures. I hugged my brilliant daughter and told her I was proud of her. Jennifer followed 2 years later, heading to Temple University to study education. She wanted to be a teacher, to help children the way her teachers had helped her. Robert cried at her graduation, actual tears rolling down his face as he watched her accept her diploma. By then, I'd seen him cry before. I'd learned that Robert could cry on command, could manufacture emotion as easily as he manufactured lies. But sitting there, watching Jennifer throw her cap in the air with her classmates, I felt something that surprised me. Gratitude. Not to Robert, never to Robert, but gratitude that I'd made the choices I did, that my daughters had gotten to this moment whole and confident and ready to take on the world. With both girls away at college, the house felt impossibly empty. Robert's absences became longer, his excuses flimsier. He wasn't even trying very hard anymore. Maybe he thought I was too old, too tired, too beaten down to care. Maybe he was right about some of that. I cut back to 2 jobs, the cleaning company and Safeway. My body couldn't handle Rosie's anymore. My feet had developed arthritis. My hands trembled from nerve damage caused by years of harsh chemicals and carrying heavy trays. But I didn't need 3 jobs anymore. The girls were taken care of. My secret account had done its job. On March 15th, 2000, I got a call at the Safeway. Robert had collapsed at his office. Heart attack. He was at County General Hospital. I needed to come right away. I drove there in a daze, my Safeway vest still on. When I got to his room in the ICU, there were tubes and wires everywhere, machines beeping steadily. Robert's face was gray, his breathing labored. The doctor told me it was serious, a major coronary event. The next 24 hours would be critical. I sat beside his bed, holding his hand, a hand that had worn wedding rings while touching other women, that had signed credit card receipts for meals with his mistresses while I ate ramen noodles between shifts. Looking at him lying there, so vulnerable and mortal, I felt nothing, not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just a vast, empty numbness. The next morning, a woman showed up. She was younger than me, but not young. maybe 40, with auburn hair and expensive clothes. She rushed to the nurse's station asking about Robert Mitchell. When she saw me sitting in his room, her face went pale. "Who are you?" she demanded. "I'm Dorothy Mitchell," I said calmly. "Robert's wife." She looked like I'd slapped her. "His wife? But he told me he was divorced, that you'd been separated for years." "Of course he did. Of course." "He lied," I said simply. "He's good at that." She started to cry then, real ugly sobs that shook her whole body. I should have hated her, should have blamed her, but looking at her, I just saw another woman Robert had used and lied to. How many had there been over the years? How many women had believed his stories, his promises, his beautiful lies? "You can see him if you want," I said. "He doesn't have much time left." She looked at me with such confusion. "Why would you? How can you?" "Because I stopped letting Robert Mitchell dictate my emotions a long time ago," I told her. "Go ahead. Say your goodbyes." She went in, stayed maybe 10 minutes. When she came out, her eyes were red and swollen. She paused by my chair in the waiting room. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know. I wouldn't have if I'd known." "I know," I said, and I did. She wasn't the villain. Neither was the woman from Safeway or any of the others. They were just people who believed a charming man's lies. We all were. After she left, I went back into Robert's room. His eyes were open, watching me. "Dot," he rasped. His voice was barely there. "I'm here." "I'm sorry." Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. "I'm so sorry. For everything. For all of it. I know you are. You knew, didn't you?" He looked at me with something like wonder. "All these years, you knew. There was no point in lying anymore." "Yes, I knew." "Why didn't you leave me?" His hand gripped mine weakly. "Why did you stay?" I looked out the window at the parking lot where I could see Sarah's car pulling in. Both girls had driven through the night when I called them. They were coming to say goodbye to their father, the man they thought was a hero. "Because you're not the only one who learned to be a good actor, Robert," I said quietly. "Because I loved our daughters more than I hated what you did to me. Because I was strong enough to carry it all alone so they wouldn't have to carry any of it." He cried then, really cried. It was the first time I'd ever seen genuine emotion from him. "I don't deserve you. I never deserved you." "No," I agreed. "You didn't." "I wasted your life," he whispered. I thought about that, about the years of backbreaking work, the loneliness, the betrayal, the secrets. Then I thought about Sarah and Jennifer, brilliant and strong and kind, about the grandchildren I'd one day have, about the life I'd built from nothing but determination and love. "You didn't waste anything," I said. "You couldn't." "Because my life was never about you, Robert. It was about them. It was always about them." He died 3 days later. Sarah and Jennifer held his hands, told him they loved him, cried over losing their father. I stood at the foot of the bed and watched a liar take his last breath, and I felt relieved. Not happy, not vindicated, just relieved that the performance was finally over. For 15 years after that, I kept my secrets. The girls mourned their father, remembered him fondly, told their children stories about their charming, hard-working grandfather. I let them have those memories. I'd protected their childhood. I could protect their grief, too. I retired from Safeway at 65, from the cleaning company at 67. My body was worn out, my hands permanently scarred from chemicals and hard work, my back forever bent from years of scrubbing and lifting. But I'd made it. Both my girls had graduated college, gotten good jobs, married decent men who loved them honestly. Sarah became a doctor, a pediatrician, specializing in treating children from low-income families. Jennifer became a teacher, just like she'd wanted, working in an elementary school in a rough neighborhood because she wanted to help kids who needed it most. They'd become exactly the kind of women I'd hoped they'd be. Strong, compassionate, resilient, unbroken. Then last summer, Sarah was helping me pack up some things from the old house. I was finally selling it, moving into a smaller apartment. Too many memories in that house, too many ghosts. She was going through a box of old photographs when she found them, pictures I'd forgotten I even had. Robert with that woman from Safeway, taken at some restaurant I'd never been to. Robert with another woman at what looked like a hotel pool. Robert with the auburn-haired woman from the hospital, laughing at some joke I'd never hear. Sarah's face went white. She held the photos out to me with shaking hands. "Mom," she said, "Mom, what are these? Was Dad?" I could have lied. I'd gotten so good at lying over the years. I could have said they were photos of Robert at business dinners, that the women were clients or colleagues. Sarah wanted to believe in her father. It would have been easy to give her that comfort. But she was 43 years old, a mother herself, a doctor who'd spent her career helping children, protecting children. She deserved the truth. So I told her everything. About the woman at Safeway and the receipt from the Starlight Motor Lodge, about the 3 jobs and the secret bank account, about every discovery, every betrayal, every year of silence, about how I'd known almost from the beginning, but chose to say nothing, to bear it all alone, so she and Jennifer could have a happy childhood. Sarah cried like I'd never seen her cry. Big, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. She kept saying, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," like any of it was her fault. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked finally. "When we were older, when we could have helped you, supported you, why didn't you say anything?" "You were my children," I said simply. "Children deserve magic. They deserve to believe in fairy tales and happy endings and parents who love each other. The adult world, with all its ugliness and betrayal, that could wait." "But you sacrificed so much," she whispered. "Your whole life." "I didn't sacrifice anything I wasn't willing to give," I interrupted. "Every choice I made with open eyes. Yes, it was hard. Yes, there were nights I thought I'd break under the weight of it all, but look at what I got in return. You and Jennifer, strong, accomplished, compassionate women, beautiful grandchildren, a family built on love, even if the foundation was rockier than you knew." We called Jennifer that night, told her together, over speakerphone. She cried too, asked the same questions, felt the same guilt. I told her what I'd told Sarah, that I regretted nothing. "But didn't you hate him?" Jennifer asked. "How could you stay with someone who treated you like that?" I thought about that question for a long time before I answered. "Hate takes energy," I finally said. "It takes emotional investment, and I couldn't afford to waste any energy or emotion on Robert. Every bit of strength I had, I needed for you girls, for working those jobs, for building that future. Hating Robert would have been like setting myself on fire to give him a tan, pointless and self-destructive." "But didn't you want love?" Sarah asked softly. "Real love, from someone who deserved you?" "I had love," I said. "I had you too. I had your laughter and your report cards and your graduation days. I had your father-daughter dances where I got to watch you shine, even if it was in Robert's arms and not mine. I had every scraped knee I bandaged, every nightmare I chased away, every small victory we celebrated together. That was real love. That was the only love that mattered. Now, sitting here in my daughter's backyard with the sun setting and my grandchildren playing in the grass, I can see the fullness of what I built from those years of silence and sacrifice. Sarah's son, Matthew, is chasing her daughter, Emma, around the swing set. Jennifer's twins are digging in the sandbox, their faces serious with concentration. Their parents, my daughters, are in the kitchen making dinner together, their husbands helping, everyone laughing about something I can't hear from here. This is what I worked 3 jobs for. This laughter, this peace, this wholeness. People might think I was a fool. Maybe I was. Maybe I should have left Robert the moment I found that first receipt, should have dragged everything into the light and made him face consequences for his actions. Maybe I should have been angrier, should have demanded justice, should have prioritized my own happiness over my daughter's innocence. But when I watch Sarah with her husband, the way she trusts him completely, the way she's built a marriage on honesty because she grew up believing that's what marriage was, I know my silence had purpose. When I watched Jennifer teach her daughters to be strong and independent and resilient, teaching them the same lessons I taught her without ever having to explain where those lessons came from, I know my sacrifice mattered. I didn't just survive those years. I built something that will outlast me, outlast Robert, outlast all the pain and betrayal and loneliness. I built a family that knows how to love truly, how to work hard, how to stay standing when the ground shifts beneath their feet. Sarah comes out now, carrying a tray of lemonade for the kids. She catches my eye and smiles, a smile full of love and understanding, and a newfound appreciation for everything I gave her. Jennifer's not far behind with paper plates and napkins, already calling the children to come wash their hands. The thing about carrying heavy burdens for a long time is that eventually you get strong enough that the weight doesn't break you anymore. It shapes you instead. It turns you into someone who can bear anything, endure anything, survive anything, because you've already survived the worst and come out standing on the other side. Robert took my youth and my trust. He took years I can never get back, nights of sleep I'll never reclaim. But he couldn't take my purpose. He couldn't take my strength, and he definitely couldn't take my daughters away from me. In the end, that's what love really is, not romance or passion or grand gestures. Sometimes love is scrubbing toilets at 2 a.m. so your daughter can go to college. Sometimes it's smiling when your heart is breaking so your children don't have to see you cry. Sometimes it's keeping secrets that cut you like glass so the people you love can keep their innocence just a little while longer. I gave my daughters a childhood worth remembering. I gave them a foundation solid enough to build their own lives on. I gave them strength without them ever having to know where it came from. That's my victory. That's my triumph. Robert Mitchell betrayed his wife, but Dorothy Mitchell never betrayed her daughters. And when I close my eyes for the last time someday, that's what I'll remember. Not the pain or the loneliness or the years of silence. Just this, the sound of my grandchildren laughing, the warmth of the setting sun, the knowledge that every sacrifice I made grew into something beautiful. That's more than enough. That's everything.